All the fuel in the world starts in one place, the sun. It's like a socket in the sky, and we're all plugged into it. But like any source of power, its output is limited, rationed. Rationed and unrefined, raw, though some primitive animals can use it raw. Reptiles, for example. They use sunshine to warm their blood. But even in the world's hotspots, lizards have to bask for a long time to get enough. Why? By the time the sun's heat gets to a lizard, there's not much left. The rays have been traveling a long way, and they have to fight to get through the atmosphere. No, what you need if you want really useful fuel is something that can catch the sunshine and hold it all in one place until you've got enough to work with. You need something like a battery. Nature's got the answer. Plants. These leaves are solar panels that really work. They take weak sunshine and concentrate it. They make fuel. And this fuel is cheap and always on hand. Plants monopolize the supply of useful energy to life on Earth. The power in the plant drives nature. Here's how fuel is produced, how sunshine is stored. In one sense, it's very complicated, mysterious even. In another, it's very simple. Deep in the cells of all plants, there's a tiny reaction going on, and basically it's this. Sunlight, filtering through the green pigment, chlorophyll, focuses on a gas, carbon dioxide, and a liquid, water. It shuffles their atoms, making a solid, carbohydrate. And that's fuel. That's stored sunshine. There's also a byproduct, which is left to float away. Oxygen. This is needed when it's time to use the sunshine, to unlock it. Bring the oxygen back by breathing, and you run the process in reverse. Everything returns to what it was to start with, including the sunshine, as heat. It's called burning, and inside living cells it's going on all the time. It's what living actually is. Plants make fuel. But animals can't. So their only choice is to take the plant's fuel by eating them.
What you've drawn is a basic representation of energy transfer. From now on, we're going to be looking at the more in-depth ways of representing the way energy and nutrients pass through the ecosystem. First, food webs. Let's consider energy transfer within an ecosystem. This is going to introduce us to a whole load of new terms, labels that can apply whichever ecosystem you're asked to look at. As you saw in the clip, all the energy to power the living world comes from the sun. And it's thanks to plants and the magic of photosynthesis that any of us, be we plankton, marigolds, buffalo or Manchester City midfielders, can use this energy. Through photosynthesis, the plants capture this energy and transfer it into food. It's then available to all other living organisms as food, either directly because they feed on plants, or indirectly because they feed on animals which feed on plants. The method of transferring energy from one organism to the other is called a food chain, and you've probably seen a food chain diagram like this before. However, most organisms feed on more than one type of organism, and therefore a more realistic representation of a feeding relationship is what's called a food web. In a food chain or web, the energy is transferred from the food to the consumer and is represented by an arrow to show the direction of the energy flow. Producers are organisms that can produce complex organic molecules from simple inorganic molecules, organisms like green plants and algae. Any organism which feeds on producers only is a primary consumer or herbivore. organisms which feed on primary consumers as secondary consumer or carnivores. There aren't any on this web, but organisms which feed at more than one trophic level that eat both producers and primary and secondary consumers are called omnivores. And there's one more group you could add to this web, the decomposers. These are the living things which feed off dead and decaying plants and animals and convert their remains to inorganic substances like mineral ions and gases. Decomposers include bacteria and fungi. When you're talking about the sequences of energy transfer, use the term trophic level to describe the level at which the organisms feed. So in this ecosystem, the algae are at the first trophic level, the pond snails and mayfly larvae are at the second, and the newts and water boatmen are at the third. Now, in an exam, you might be asked to define terms. Even more probably, you'll be given an example of a food web and asked to talk about it. Don't forget, it doesn't matter if you don't recognise the individual organisms. What you're being asked to show is that you understand the principles.
When you're revising and you're preparing for your examination, it's just as important that you learn the skills that you're going to have to apply, as well as learning the facts. Sometimes you can just get overwhelmed by the volume of facts that you're going to have to know. And that is important. You do need to know the facts. But unless you can use them in the right way in the examination questions, then you're not really going to do very well on the paper. So look in your specification where you will see the skills listed that you're going to have to use, such as interpreting information, dealing with statistical information, whatever it is that you're going to need to do, and do spend time learning that as well as simply taking on board all the factual material that you're going to need.